So in this video, I'm going to go over bias, and in particular media bias, for your Week 6 forum. So what bias article can I post to the Week 6 forum? Bias is defined as prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group, compared with another, usually in a way that is unfair. When we tell only one side of a story or omit facts rather than tell both sides of a story, we are being biased. In the Week 6 forum, you will post biased articles. A biased article is a one-sided article that talks about one side of an issue. Biased articles are not fair and balanced. Biased articles exaggerate or distort the truth, lack documentation, or make strong assertions with lots of exclamation marks. All TV stations are biased because they lean either to the left or to the right and not tell the whole story. For instance, Fox News is biased because they lean conservative and only talk about the conservative point of view, while CNN News is biased because they lean to the left and only talk about stuff on the left. This is known as ideological bias. So common types of biased articles you can post to the Week 6 forum. Sponsored stories. So sponsored stories are the ads that you see on the internet, or any article that says sponsored by, paid by, or ad. And so ads are not reliable sources because the owner of the ad is trying to sell you a product, and the owner and the ad will lie, distort the truth, exaggerate the facts in order to sell that product. So sponsored stories are biased stories that cannot be trusted. So you can post sponsored stories to the Week 6 forum. Clickbait. Clickbait's also an ad, and except it's even more dramatic, even more exaggerated. And you can usually see clickbait is when they use exaggerated language with lots of exclamation points. Satire is when, like in The Onion, is when they make fun of current events. Advertisements. So all advertisements are biased and false. So you can post any kind of advertisements that you want to the Week 6 forum and then explain to the reader, explain to us why this advertisement is biased. Fox News exaggerates the news and is biased. So you can post anything from the Fox News website and then explain how it's conservative and how it's one-sided. Or you can go to CNN.com and you can get an article from there and then explain why that CNN article is one-sided and how it favors the left. And then tabloid newspapers. Anything from the National Enquirer website has false, exaggerated, and biased articles. So that's because National Enquirer deals in gossip. National Enquirer even calls themselves the gossip newspaper. And gossip is defined as when you make claims. Let's say let's say we're all in the faculty room together and we make rumors and we say, hey, did you know that the math teacher is having an affair with the English teacher? He's married. His wife has no idea that he's fooling around with another woman. Okay, and then there's absolutely no evidence. You have no evidence that math teacher's having an affair. That's the kind of rumors National Enquirer deals in. So you can post a National Enquirer article and explain in the Week 6 forum why this is biased, why this is false. And you could also go to the Student News Daily website for examples of biased articles you can post to the Week 6 forum. After you post your biased forum in the Week 6 forum, explain to everybody why it is biased. So here's some more examples. So sponsored stories are usually the articles that's found after you read your regular article. So let's say you're reading a very serious article about climate change. Then you scroll down, and then at the very end of your serious, reliable article, you will see a lot of ads. And these ads are usually at the end of your article. And so then it's always sponsored stories. So any sponsored story is biased because they're trying to sell you a product. They're not telling you the whole truth. They're not telling you the good, bad, and the ugly of the product. They only tell you what benefits you can get from that product, even if they have to lie through their teeth just to get you to buy the product. That's why any kind of gossip, any kind of ad is a biased article. See, think dental implants are expensive. Think again. So you don't know that dental implants could cause infections. You think they're going to mention that in their ad? Of course not. All they're going to mention about dental implants, for example, is how good you're going to look in those new teeth and how you can eat corn again. And that only deals with the benefits. But what about infections? So that makes the dental implant sponsored article, that's biased. Okay, so this is all, and they try to look like, notice how they try to make it look like real articles to fool you into thinking, oh, this is believable because it looks credible. Well, just because something looks credible or looks real does not make it real. So that's one of the critical thinking skills I want to teach in this class. Okay, so you can post any of these biased articles to the Week 6 forum. The reason why sponsored content is biased is because they are advertisements that lie to get you to buy the product. So these ads are one-sided. They only tell you how great their product is without telling you the good, the bad, and the ugly. We cannot trust ads to be truthful. So therefore, these ads are biased. So sponsored stories are usually located after the real article that you read. So any article that says it is an ad is biased, unreliable. So you can post that to the Week 6 forum and then tell everybody why that is biased. Clickbait. So the clickbait is a kind of ad where they tell you, look at the transformation of the latest celebrity. Look what happened to her now. Look how this is how she looks now, or something like that. The tragic transformations of 15 cutest child stars ever. Okay, so anytime you have that kind of a clickbait, that means that clickbait, the word clickbait means that it's a bait that makes you want to click on it. And then the more you click on it, the more the advertiser makes money. So every time you have some kind of ad where the advertiser has a vested interest in making money off of you, then obviously that is not objective and that is not reliable, because they have an interest in getting you to click on their clickbait article. So the clickbait article always looks exaggerated, distorted. Look at his face. How could she turn from this to this? Yet there are some people who will believe in it. They go, what? How could that be? How could such a cute face turn into such an ugly face? And so out of curiosity, people will click on it and be fooled. So don't be a fool and think that this is real. Okay, another one. She is 51 but looks 25. Wow, this is a miracle cure for, getting young again. And so once again, this is a clickbait because they simply want you to click on the ad so that they can make money. Wow, look at the surprising way you can lose weight. So go join that diet. That's also a clickbait because they just want you to click on it and then you get a website full of lies so that you could buy the product. Learn the truth now? Oh, that's so ironic. Okay. And then here's some more clickbait. 17 facts you won't believe are true. 42 wrestlers you won't believe actually existed. Why BuzzFeed doesn't do clickbait. Oh, that means that they do clickbait. But they're trying to be ironic just to see how gullible you are. All right. Oh, you won't believe what happened to this person. So anytime you see something like, you're not going to believe it. Oh my God, this is how it's happening. Oh, a miracle has happened. Look what happened to the way she looks. 17 things you would never know this is going to happen. Exclamation point, exclamation point. And they use such exaggerated language or have exaggerated, that kind of stuff. So all of that you can actually, so for this assignment, you can actually post clickbait articles and then explain to us why that's biased and why that's not reliable. So clickbait articles are biased because they exaggerate the facts, lie, distort the truth, and do not tell both sides of an issue. Anytime the owner or writer of an ad has a vested interest or agenda, then the article is not objective. And so a clickbait is an ad that every time you click on it, the owner of the clickbait earns money. That is how those kind of ads make, that's why they're not trustworthy, and you would not use clickbait ads as a source for your paper. Here, in tabloids, okay, so if you go to the National Enquirer website, you will get all kinds of rumors, scandals, things that, in other words, whenever you make a claim and you don't back it up with credible evidence, that's called gossip, that's called rumor, that's called fallacy, that's also called propaganda. In other words, all biased, and you cannot believe it, and you cannot use any of these non-credible sources for your paper. Otherwise, your paper turns into the National Enquirer. Okay, you don't want to be known as the gossip king or the gossip queen. Okay, you want to have a solid reputation as a good, credible writer. So we want to avoid these kind of articles or sources in our paper. You can also tell when an article is biased is when they use these kind of banned from Britain, stripped from royal line of succession, all titles taken away. King Charles disowns Harry and his kids. Netflix lies, went too far. So you totally exaggerate the truth just to get the reader's attention. So this is the same exaggerated language you see in clickbait. Okay, 17 facts you won't believe. Okay, so the same, they're trying to get you to get so curious that you're gonna put aside your logic and suspend your belief, and then just like when you watch a cartoon or a movie, you actually believe Superman can fly. So it's that kind of suspension of belief, and they get you so excited. That's another one, appeal to emotion. Whenever you see an article that just appeals to pathos, to your emotion, that is not a reliable source. Because in order for an argument to be reliable, it's got to have ethos, pathos, and logos. If the article appeals to only your emotions, such as pathos, that means that article is biased and not to be trusted. So that's how you can tell something that you read is reliable or not reliable. You have to have ethos. Ethos is the appeal to credibility. You have to have pathos, that's appeal to emotion. Then logos, appeal to logic. You got to have all three appeals in the same article, and that's how the article is reliable. These articles in the National Enquirer, it lacks credibility. In other words, it lacks ethos. It lacks logos, which means it lacks logic. All it has is pathos. In other words, emotion. So any article that only talks emotion is not reliable, and therefore is biased, because they only talk about one side of the story. Okay, so here you have an article about King Charles disowns Harry. Well, what's the other side of the story? So here you have what's King Charles' side of the story? Okay, so in other words, if you want to have a balanced article, you would have an interview with King Charles, and you would have an article about Harry, and then both sides will talk about their point of view about what's happening. Then you have a balanced article. You always have to have both sides of the story. Okay, it's just like when you have someone go on trial go on trial for murder. You have the prosecutor who prosecutes the case. You have a defense lawyer who defends the defendant. If you just have only the prosecutor, that exists. That means that you live in an authoritarian kind of regime, like Russia or China, okay, where whatever the government says, you're guilty, and there is no defense lawyer. It's just whatever the prosecutor and the government says. In other words, it's one-sided. So if you have a trial that's one-sided, that's biased. So you want to have a fair and balanced trial. You have to have someone to defend the person, and then someone to charge the person, and in both sides. So whenever you have, so in both covers, so I'm talking about this cover, and I think there's another one. Yeah, here's another one. So here is another National Enquirer where, oh my God, Jared and Ivanka, their marriage is on the rocks. And then here, how do you know for sure? So if you really want to know for sure, you have to interview Jared, you have to interview Ivanka. You can't just believe everything that you read, especially National Enquirer. And so here, real reason Harry hates William. GMA Amy dumps lover TJ. 45 celebrity predictions. Marriage, mayhem, miracles. And so in both of these covers, okay, it is National Enquirer, it totally exaggerates somebody's marriage falling apart, someone's family is falling apart, someone's really sick and near the end of their days. Any kind of exaggerated article that leans too much on one side or appeals to pathos, to emotion, is a biased article. Rather than focus on both sides of an issue, or rather than focus on objective facts, National Enquirer, the gossip magazine, focuses on all kinds of scandals just to appeal to the emotion of the reader. So any article that has only pathos but lacks ethos and logos is not reliable and is biased. To have a non-biased story, you need a story that has all three appeals: ethos, pathos, and logos. And so you can post any of these kind of scandalous articles onto the Week 6 forum and then explain to us the reason why this is biased is because it only appeals to pathos. It does not have ethos and it doesn't have logos. In other words, it's not credible and it's not logical. Okay, so you got to have all three: ethos, pathos, and logos. And so all of the biased articles that you're going to see in the Week 6 forum lack logos and ethos. And that's what makes them biased. Okay, so all of this you have to assume is false and you don't believe. So that's one of the critical thinking skills I want to teach you in this English 105 class, is that you don't believe everything you read. Also, anything you see on social media also is suspect. Okay, so you can't believe what you read in social media either. I forgot to add those examples because there's so much. So take a look at the outrageous bias articles in the National Enquirer. Biased articles use a lot of dramatic words and a lot of exclamation marks, just like clickbait articles. You can take any articles from this tabloid for your biased, unreliable article that talks about only one side of the story. And so in this class, I want you to learn the difference between fact and fiction. Now I'm going to focus on ideological bias, where the TV stations lean either to the pro-Democrat, that is to the left, or pro-Republican, that is to the right. So Fox News, it has a lot of conservative articles because they lean to the right. In other words, they are for the Republicans. They are for Trump. And so Fox News has a lot of biased articles. Biased articles use loud words and exaggerations to make in Fox News, they do whatever they can to make the Democrats look bad, and they do whatever they can to make President Biden look bad and make President Trump and any of the Republicans look good. So this is known as ideological bias, when you only tell one side of the story and are not objective in telling both sides of the story. And so and then CNN. Okay, so here's an example of Fox News. I took a screenshot of the Fox News website, and here you have Biden being hypocrite in chief, and then you have Biden looking a little, I don't know, like he's old, senile, and unhinged, and he just got out of bed dressed like in something that looks like his pajamas. So hypocrite in chief. And so he's making Biden, and here's another one. Look at that. He looks like he's totally unhinged. So they deliberately manipulate you into thinking that Biden is an unfit president, he's old, he's not fit to, that sort of thing. So this has all got to do with confirmation bias. In other words, the reason why these TV stations are all, not just Fox News, all the TV stations, news stations are biased is because of something called confirmation bias. This means that they do it for ratings. It means that most people would only like to watch TV, watch news that confirm their own beliefs. This is why on social media, people unfriend each other and only are friends with people who are their own belief. So that's known as confirmation bias, meaning you only want to hang out with people who believe what you believe, and you don't care about what other people believe or the other side of the aisle. And so that is confirmation belief and confirmation bias. And so you get huge ratings when you cater to only a particular audience, okay? If you cater only to your Republican audience, then all the Republicans will watch your TV show. If you cater to the Democrats, which is what CNN does, then you get a lot of Democrats that watch that TV station because of confirmation bias. That means that you don't care what the other side thinks. So the journalists and the TV stations take advantage of your confirmation bias. And so here Fox News goes out of their way to make Biden look crazy, okay? Or so it's one-sided. You make Biden look bad. If you want to be objective, you show the good, the bad, and the ugly. You show how Biden is. You can show the bad side of Biden, but then you also show the good side of Biden. That is an objective story, is when you show both sides. But when you show both sides of a story, at least on TV, that's boring, and you don't get much ratings. So that's why everybody goes for bias, because bias sells in a way. So here you have in the Fox News picture, Biden looks crazy and unhinged. He is also dressed up unprofessionally. Now check out this CNN article. I took a screenshot of CNN, which makes Biden look dignified and presidential. Let's go take a look. What a difference. Yeah, he's standing behind a podium here. This is from the CNN website. Now you have Biden looking very presidential, very dignified. He doesn't look the least bit unhinged. You don't see his hair flying up like he's got bedhead hair or something. But they don't tell the bad side of Biden. All CNN does, see, this is from CNN Politics, Biden and his team feeling vindicated by a 2022 turnaround built on this. In other words, they make him look good. They make him look presidential. They make it look like he's doing a really good job. Biden and his team are feeling good about 2022. Yeah, okay, that's nice. So that's the difference. Here you have Biden looking a little like he just got out of bed, or he looks unhinged. Look at how his eyes are bulging out. And now here, suddenly, he looks presidential. So what are you to believe? Do you believe CNN or do you believe Fox News? Well, you believe neither. We don't believe in anything that's biased. We don't believe in anything in which it's just one-sided. So just like you don't believe in National Enquirer or Clickbait, we don't want to believe in this. Now here's an example of a website that tells both sides of the story. So this website is called Allsides.com. So Allsides.com tells the reader both sides of the story. In other words, it will tell you how the right is, how Allsides.com tells the reader how a story is reported on the left. On the left-leaning media outlets like CNN, and right-leaning media outlets like Fox News, Breitbart, or Newsmax, giving the reader access to a balanced story that is fair. So you're not going to post any article from allsides.com because allsides.com tells all sides of a story. So here, when you look at this particular picture, you don't think that neither one of them looks unhinged, nor do they look particularly presidential. They just look ordinary. Okay, so because the newspapers and they use video and pictures to manipulate you, just like a clickbait with that ugly face. Remember the twin that turned into that ugly thing? So here with allsides.com, you do not have media bias. So whenever a journalist covers only one side of a story, that is called media bias. And so allsides.com makes it their goal to point out to the reader the media bias of the left side media and of the right side media. So they tell both sides of the story. And so here, for instance, coverage from left-sided outlets. Now, coverage from right-sided outlets. In other words, this is how CNN tells how Biden is so presidential and so good. But on the other side, on Fox, they tell how Biden is a bad guy. So when you have a website that tells you both sides of the story, both the left and the right, together, then you have balanced news. And so here you can go to allsides.com and you can read more about how biased articles cause media bias and misinformation. And you can get perspectives on any kind of story. And so one of the stories is about Hunter Biden. It's a well-known fact that Hunter Biden, who is the son of President Biden, and this son has been embroiled in many scandals that would make the president look bad. And so what's happened is that a lot of the left-leaning outlets like CNN, CNBC, CBS, they bury the story. They don't talk about Hunter Biden at all because they are afraid of making President Biden look bad. So remember, the Democrats want to make President Biden look good, so they bury the story. And then on the conservative, the other side, Fox News, they talk about nothing but Hunter Biden, because they just want to make President Biden look bad. Well, we don't want someone looking good or looking bad. We want to know everything. We want to know President Biden's good side and his bad side, and we want to know about Hunter Biden, and we want equal coverage. We don't want uneven coverage, because if you have uneven coverage, that's also biased. So in Hunter, so here when you read this, the investigation into Hunter Biden continues as feds weigh charges. Notice how there's no exclamation points, no emotionally charged language, nothing. That just states the facts. So when you have a non-biased article, simply states the facts. It is objective. It talks about both sides of an issue. This is how your paper is supposed to look like. Your paper will cover both sides because you're going to use a counter-argument paragraph, and you're going to use a rebuttal paragraph where you discuss evenly both sides of an issue so that your research argumentative essay will be fair and balanced and non-biased. That's your goal. You want to be non-biased. You don't want to be biased. So you want to look ordinary. No exaggerations, no distortions, no exaggerated appeal. In other words, this article has ethos, pathos, and logos. And it's got kapow. It's current. It's got A for author, written by an expert. P, the purpose. It is not an ad. O, it's objective. And W, the writing style, is professional. If we go back to, this is not professional. Not professional, okay? This is professional. Professional is boring, okay? That's why the news stations, when you read this, does that excite you in any way? No. So this kind of coverage does not bring in the audience, you see. And that's why the news coverage, like the TV, they just feed on your emotion. Because as soon as something feeds on your emotion, like an ad, you know not to believe it. So if you want fair coverage, you should try out allsides.com. There are other sites like it too. So in conclusion, we do not use biased articles or in our academic research paper. We use only credible non-biased sources. Okay, so this should say non-biased sources in our paper. How can we tell if a source is reliable? We use kapow. And so use kapow to evaluate sources to make sure that they are credible and reliable. So first, C, you got to make sure that the article is current within 10 years. A, the author is an expert. P, the purpose of the article is not an ad. O, the article is objective and tells both sides of a story. This means you cannot use biased articles in your paper because biased articles are not credible and reliable. W, writing style. The writing style is professional, has a thesis. Unlike clickbait titles which distort facts, lie, and exaggerate their stories. And so reliable sources for your paper include the peer-reviewed articles from your online library, Google Scholar, any article from the Azusa Pacific Library. Now, unreliable sources are sources like Wikipedia, personal blogs, Clickbait, advertisement, and tabloid newspapers. So when we write our papers, we use credible sources. We use Kapow to make sure our sources are reliable. If we use unreliable sources for our paper, then our paper becomes fallacies. Fallacies are illogical arguments, which is very similar to biased articles. There are three main kinds of fallacies, and some of the fallacies are the same as a biased article. You've got the fallacy of relevance. This means you make a claim and then you back up your claim with no documentation, or you back up your claim with non-reliable or non-existent sources. TV commercials are examples of fallacies of relevance. For instance, 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Dentine gum. Which dentists? Who are these dentists? What dentists are you talking about? What research? So that's a fallacy of relevance. Fallacy of ambiguity, when you use vague words in your claim and back up that vague claim with false reasoning. For example, all beetles have 6 legs. John Lennon is a beetle, so John Lennon has 6 legs. That makes no sense. Fallacy of overgeneralization, when we make a claim and back up the claim with false reasoning or faulty, non-reliable evidence, leading us to false conclusions. For example, all Chinese people are good at math. So what evidence do you have that all Chinese people are good at math? Do you have any credible evidence to back up that claim, or is it just your personal opinion? So every time it's somebody's personal opinion and they can't back it up with credible sources and research, then it's a fallacy of overgeneralization. That is why we always back up our thesis statement with research. That is why we use APA. That's why we use APA, so that we prove to the reader that we didn't just make it up off the top of our heads. Otherwise, if we don't back it up, it becomes a fallacy of overgeneralization. Just like I could say, did you know that there are people living on the other side of the moon, and that we humans all evolved from the aliens living on the other side of the moon? Because that's my personal opinion and I truly believe it. And then you have no credible evidence to back it up. And so that becomes a fallacy of overgeneralization. So we avoid fallacies by using Kapow to get credible sources. So when we make a claim, we back up our paper with credible sources. And so websites ending in .gov, .edu, and .org are trustworthy websites. And so we avoid bias in our writing by presenting both sides of an issue. When we put in our paper a counter-argument and rebuttal paragraph to argue both sides of an issue in order for our paper to be fair and balanced. When we read articles, we make sure that the article is not a fallacy, and we make sure that the article does not have media bias by using ethos, pathos, and logos. And if the article has all 3 appeals, then it is a good article. So you have to have ethos, appeal to credibility, written by an expert; pathos, appeal to emotion; and then you got logos, appeal to logic. The article has a thesis with matching body paragraphs, no grammar errors, and professionally done. And so that ends my lecture on what to do for your media bias and bias in writing. So all of this is about bias in writing and how to spot bias and fallacies in what you read, so that you don't believe everything that you read on social media, or everything that you read in newspapers, and everything that you see or hear on television. So for next week, week 7, so this week we went over bias in writing. Next week we're going to go over personal bias. So what unconscious personal bias do you have? Everybody has an unconscious personal bias. No matter how enlightened or non-racist you think you are, you have biases. Anybody that's walking and talking today has biases, because we've all been exposed to these clickbait articles. We've all been exposed to these biased articles. We've all been exposed to television shows from the early 20th century that show so many racial stereotypes. I'm not going to even name them in this lecture. And so because of our exposure in everyday life to a lot of stereotypes, that makes everybody full of bias. And so if you want to find out exactly what personal bias you have, you can take the implicit bias test given by Harvard University for fun, just to see. Implicit bias is the same thing as personal bias. In other words, what prejudice do you have? What unconscious prejudice or personal bias, which I will discuss. If you go to the week 7 lecture, I give a definition, okay, of what is personal bias. Okay, so I'm not going to do that here. So go watch the week 7 lecture, and then you're going to post to the week 7 forum what are your personal biases. Okay, what is it that you have a prejudice against, and what is, so you can go ahead and take that implicit bias test given by Harvard University, and if you want, you can then post the results of that test, and you're going to be shocked that yes, you do have such and such a bias. Everybody does. So don't think of yourself or anyone else less of yourself just because you have that. Blame it on the media. You blame all these biases on the media that feeds you all of this false information. And they fed you these false information from the time you were a little kid. Many cartoons, such as Disney, feed children with racial stereotypes, especially Disney around 1950s, 1960s, before the civil rights movement. Any cartoons or movies made before 1965 are filled with stereotypes. And then as little kids, you take that in as a Disney classic, for instance. That's just one example. So everybody has these implicit biases, and so that's what we're going to discuss in week 7. It's not about bias in writing, but the bias, how did the bias in writing that we've all been exposed to affect our personal choices? How did all of this bias affect our personal life and affect our way of seeing the world and perceiving the world? And so if we can recognize our own biases, we can then avoid writing and putting in these biases in our academic paper, where we have to be always objective. And this is why in English 101 I place so much importance on you guys writing your research papers using only third-person case, which is the most professional of all the cases, okay, in which you are reporting what somebody else is thinking, not just what you're thinking, okay, because when what you're thinking, that's not objective, that's subjective. So that I'm going to wrap this up because I've gone way above 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me.